So I thought I'd go over just a few review questions as you're preparing for the exam. So the first question I have is, if a person consumed 40% of their daily calories from carbohydrates, what would you recommend? So the first thing you need to know is the recommended amount of carbohydrates. You can't make a recommendation for somebody unless you know how much they should be consuming. So in this case, we're talking about percent of daily calories. So that would be the AMDR, the acceptable macronutrient distribution ranges. So the AMDR for carbohydrates is 45 to 65%. So we know that 40% is less than 45 to 65%. So knowing that it's less, so that means we need to increase the amount of carbohydrates. So the most reasonable answer would be B, increase complex carbohydrates from whole grains. Don't make the mistake of just choosing the guideline or what sounds like the most healthy option in your mind, because that is not always the correct answer. Reducing added sugars would actually decrease the amount of carbohydrates from your calories, so that would make it worse. Replace some of the simple carbohydrates with unsaturated fats sounds like a lovely option, but again, we're reducing carbohydrates, so that would not be the correct answer. The next question, what percent of calories come from fat when a person consumes 40 grams of fat on an 1800 calorie diet? So in this question, we have a math problem. We're trying to figure out the percent of calories. Well, we know the calories are 1800, so we're trying to figure out what is the percent of 1800 calories that come from fat. We know there are 40 grams of fat. So the way we calculate this is by taking the grams of fat, multiply it by the calories per gram, and then divide by 1800. So let me show you what this looks like. So we have 40 grams of fat. There are 9 calories in every gram of fat. So that means we are consuming 360 calories from fat. Now we have to figure out what percent of that 1800 calorie diet comes from fat. So we take 360 divided by 1800 gives us 0.2, and of course multiply by 100 to get the percentage, which is 20%. Then the next question I might ask is that in range? Is 20% in range? Well, again, I would go back to what is the recommended range. The AMDR for fat is 20 to 35%, so yes, barely, but it is in range. In this question, what can be said about a food that has 15% daily value for calcium? For this question, you have to know whether or not it is, you need to know the nutrient claims. So the answers say it is low in calcium, it has a moderate amount of calcium, it is a good source of calcium, or it is high in calcium. So going back to the nutrient claims, we know that low in calcium would be less than 5% of the daily value. Moderate amount of calcium is actually not a food claim whatsoever. And then we have good source of calcium. Good source would be 10 to 19% daily value. And then high in would be greater than 20% or 20% or more than the daily value. So since this food has 15% daily value, we know that is a good source of calcium. What is an example of a minimally processed food? We have an option of frozen broccoli, canned pears and light syrup, flavored yogurt, and ketchup. So frozen broccoli, in this case, would be the correct answer. It is frozen, which is a processing technique, but it doesn't alter the food in any way and nothing is added to it. The canned pears and light syrup would be processed, and the flavored yogurt and ketchup would probably be in the ultra-processed category. Which nutrients are carried by the circulatory transport system? So in other words, which of the nutrients are carried in the bloodstream when they're absorbed into our transport systems? So if you go through these options, we have long-chain fatty acids, fat-soluble vitamins, soluble fiber, and amino acids. In this case, we know that only water-soluble nutrients are carried by the bloodstream. The long-chain fatty acids go into the lymphatic system. Fat-soluble vitamins go into the lymphatic system. And soluble fiber never makes it to your blood because it is not digested. So the correct answer would be amino acids. What is the purpose of lipoproteins? I find that students confuse this word very often. So lipoproteins are the carriers of fat. So carriers of fat through the blood. Emulsifying fat would be bile. Denaturing protein would be unrelated to fat. And provide structure to all cells are phospholipids. So in this case, the carries fats through the blood would be the correct answer. Examples of lipoproteins might be chylomicrons, LDL and VLDL, and HDL, which would be the good lipoprotein carrier of cholesterol and other fats. Where does chemical digestion of fat occur? Correct answer, small intestine. What can be said if a person consumes 25% of their calories from fat and 6% from saturated fat? Again, this question goes back to the AMDR. They are consuming the right amount of both fats. They need to reduce saturated fat. They need to increase their total fat, or D, they need to decrease their total fat. So we go back. What is the AMDR for total fat? The AMDR for fat is 20 to 35%. And for saturated fat, it is less than 10%. So we know that they are consuming the right amount of both fats. Next question, what is the amino acid sequence? So we know that the amino acid sequence is the order of amino acids that determines the function of a protein. And what can be said if a person is in positive nitrogen balance? So positive nitrogen balance occurs when you have more nitrogen being consumed in the form of protein, more coming in than what you are excreting. So in that case, we would know that positive nitrogen balance is in a growth stage. So these are just some explanations of how you walk through the information that is in the question. These are the type of questions you're going to see. Please remember to go through the practice tests that are in there as well. Alrighty, have a good day.